Good morning. My name is Wright. I'm a therapist here at Qualia Counseling Services, and happy Mental Health Week. I want to talk to you today about the theme of Mental Health Week this year, which is to understand our emotions. And it's kind of a tricky year for emotions, isn't it? I wonder, are there emotions that you might find particularly difficult or troubling? I wonder what you think about having emotions. You know, a lot of us have different ideas and different things we've been told about whether emotions are good or whether emotions are bad, or whether certain emotions are good or bad. And I think we have this idea that if we're healthy, if we're doing well, we'll probably feel mostly good emotions. We'll feel happy, joyful, excited. We might laugh a lot. We might feel humor. And that if we're feeling well, we shouldn't feel sad or scared or hurt or grief or any of those things. I think sometimes that idea can be unhelpful. And I think there are generally two different paths or two different responses that we have available to us when it comes to how we respond to our emotions. One path, which is a common one, is to say, this isn't good, is to catastrophize our emotions. Let me use an example. Let's say that you feel anxiety. And in response to anxiety, you might then say, oh, not again. You might say, oh no, this is horrible. Or you might ask yourself some things like, am I always going to feel this way? Will I ever get better? What's wrong with me? I should feel different. What you've done then is you've taken anxiety, which is already difficult enough. It already brings its own challenge and its own physical experience, right? Your heart rate, maybe your breathing, some of these may be familiar to you. But then you've catastrophized it, which is not really a real word, but it's what we do. We jump to this conclusion that this is horrible, and we make the anxiety even harder. You could say that we have then anxiety about anxiety. We can do this same thing with any number of emotions, with sadness, with feeling grief, with feeling embarrassed. We have another path available to us. This path can be a little bit harder or it can be unfamiliar to us, but the other path that we have available to us is the path of acceptance. On this path, we maybe acknowledge our emotions. We get better and better at putting words to our emotions, at talking about them. You maybe have heard the phrase, maybe even from Tom here earlier, that we can name it in order to tame it. And it is true that as we begin to talk about our experience of emotions, as we acknowledge that I am feeling sad today, or I am feeling anxious today, that it can actually, surprisingly, make it a little bit easier to handle. We can feel a bit of a lightness, a bit of the weight is lifted off of our chest as we express and acknowledge our emotions. And then even more maybe if we have safe people that we can turn to and we can share our emotions with them. That's one of the wonderful things about therapy, is that it gives a safe place that we maybe don't experience elsewhere to talk about our experience and how we're feeling. Some other things we can do to help with this, we can use journaling. We can write down what we're feeling. This happened today, and it made me feel these things, these really strong things. I should acknowledge that we could also write down our positive emotions. That would be more like a gratitude practice. And you might even write down what thoughts came with those emotions and the situation. The other thing that you can do, sometimes this can be very helpful, if we aren't so good at naming our emotions, if we don't have the language, you could even look up a list of possible emotions, and you could pick from that list. Yes, this is what I'm feeling, sad, or alone, or afraid, or joyful, thankful, I feel light. You might have these kinds of words for some of these emotions. I want to say that our emotions actually have value. They have purpose. Have you ever wondered why we have these things? Why we have emotions? They have a purpose. Emotions tell us something. They tell us when maybe something is missing in our lives. Or they tell us when something is not right. They tell us when we need to add something or when we need to do something. A very common example right now, as we're in this pandemic time, is that sometimes my emotions tell me when I need to get out of the house, when I need to go on a walk, or I need to go on a bike ride, or I need to have some kind of nice, good fun. A bike ride is a great example. And so our emotions do tell us something important, and it's, I think, important to listen to them, to give them that dignity and that value. Finally, I want to say that this can be really hard for us. It can be a very uncomfortable experience, and it can be unfamiliar. And so that can be one time when therapy might be useful. If you find that you consistently feel depressed and sad, and maybe you have negative thoughts about yourself, or if you consistently feel a lot of anxiety, that might be a good sign that you might need some help in navigating these emotions and in walking this journey with somebody. And I would suggest that therapy could be a great option at that time. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for being here with us and tuning into this. I hope you enjoy this week, this mental health week, and I hope that you feel well as you walk this journey with your emotions.